maintain an edge there. There's a lot of talk about green energy here in the U.S., and many everyday Americans want to know what a climate change bill would mean for them and their jobs. Joining us now is the spokesman at the Institute for Energy Research, Pat Creighton. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Well, thanks for having me, Shannon.
It fought a hard battle, climate change, coming through the House. Nancy Pelosi marshaled her forces, got it passed there. Now we see it coming down the pike in the Senate. How do you think it's going to fare?
Well, I think it's too early to say. But your viewers, when they hear climate change, they hear global warming, there are a lot of different words tossed around to describe this legislation. When this debate began, it was a global warming debate. It then became a green jobs, and then clean energy jobs and clean energy debate. Well, this is purposely done. There's a lot of money at work here to find the right word mix to sell this to the American people. But at the end of the day, this is nothing more than a national energy tax. And we'll see how it plays out. There are some alliances forming in the Senate, as you saw today in the New York Times. But I think the more the American people learn about this legislation, Shannon, the more opposed they're going to be.
And we have heard it referred to as a tax, and I believe that either Leader John Boehner, a minority leader in the House, or Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, one of them said it's akin to every time you turn on the light, every time that you fill up your gas tank, you're going to be paying a tax. But Democrats obviously are going to say that's not the case. John Kerry, the senator, Democratic senator, has introduced his version over on the Senate side and says that it is a pollution-ending bill. It's not cap and trade. Well,
It's funny you say that. Energy is more than just turning on the lights and fueling up the gas tank. Every product we use and consume in our daily lives, that goes from the laptop to cell phones, to just about everything else. Energy is used as a feedstock. And when you increase the cost of that feedstock and materials used to manufacture and produce goods, costs are going to go up. And those costs are going to be passed on to consumers. So it's ironic that there are some companies out there that are coming out in support of cap and trade and climate change legislation. But I don't think those companies manufacture and produce their goods here in the good old USA. Apple's one of the examples, Shannon. They produce their products and assemble them in China. They made news this week, one of the big companies to come out and lead the Chamber of Commerce. But, I wonder what their position will be if they manufactured those laptops and iPods in Michigan, Missouri, Pennsylvania.
All right, you mentioned some unusual alliances coming together in this op-ed that was out in the New York Times, I believe, today. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, and Democratic Senator John Kerry, who we mentioned has his bill winding its way through the Senate. Quote, "We refuse to accept the argument that the U.S. cannot lead the world in addressing global climate change. We are also convinced that we have found both a framework for climate legislation to pass Congress and the blueprint for a clean energy future that will revitalize our economy, protect current jobs and create new ones, safeguard our national security, and reduce pollution." And yet there are a number of studies, and there are critics of them, that say the U.S. stands to lose millions of jobs if we implement some of these green job policies. What do you make of that bipartisan alliance?
Well, it is troubling to see Senator Graham come out in support of this legislation. South Carolina's unemployment rate is quickly approaching 12%. So I'm not quite sure his constituents, when they find out exactly what climate change and cap and trade legislation is, they will be supportive. But going back to the green jobs question, let's take Spain for an example. Here's a country that has invested hundreds or tens of billions of dollars. They have a cap and trade regime on the books. They signed the Kyoto Protocol, but their unemployment's over 19%. Their carbon emissions have increased 50% since 2000. So, they have all of these policies and regulations on the books, and it's not getting to the point where proponents want it to be, and that's reducing CO2 emissions. The last thing this legislation can be caught is a jobs bill. 9 out of 10 green jobs are unsustainable. They require massive government subsidies and mandates. 1 in 10 are in operations and maintenance of these solar fields and wind fields. So if you only have 1 in 10 jobs that are in operation and maintenance of these fields, you have to keep feeding this beast. And you have to keep providing the subsidies and mandates in order for these folks to produce and build these windmills and solar panels. So I don't think it's sustainable, and I don't think that government regulations and mandates are the way to go to address this problem. Markets, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, they're the best ways to address this, not through government subsidies.
Well, we will continue to see this debate rage on Capitol Hill. Thank you for your insight.
Well, thank you for having me today.
A hole in one is enough for anyone to